Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Yes, we've made it to Friday. That's got to put
We
a smile
have.
on somebody's face.
Oh my gosh.
For a second there, you made me think, I'm like, nobody's reacting. Maybe I should check the calendar. I'm not really.
Oh my gosh, it is Friday. I had my head down. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Good to see you again, Steve. Good to see you.
Dude, that's Dan Clark. He is an amazing life coach. And we're going to talk about transforming your life today. Now, Dan's website is transformedlife.net, but there is a reason for that because you're very effective, very helpful in transforming lives, making them better, making them more beneficial, just more robust and living the life you should be living. And in doing that, it's all about emotion. We've talked about that before. And that's really what I think makes you different. Like you center on emotion, which is the center of everything that we deal with, right?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you have the 5 stages of transformation, things that we should be thinking about, things that we should be doing if we want to transform our life.
Well, the first thing that we should be asking ourselves is what I want life to be like. This kind of is a vision idea. You know, when I'm working with someone, and let me give you a really good example about vision for just a moment, because I had a great thing happen to me yesterday. Working with a couple that have been together about 25 years, have got 4 kids. And they've separated, they're living separately, came in to see me. In about 40 minutes, we had decided that it wasn't the reason that they thought that the relationship wasn't surviving. It was because they hadn't worked through the stuff that was inside them that they brought to the relationship. And that's what transformation is about. It doesn't matter why, the majority of people that show up in my world have some life crisis, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that life crisis always goes back to the inability to learn how to be my best self. And when someone understands how to be your best self, you can transform every part of their life.
And if you can't be your best self, you can't be your best self for somebody else like your partner.
Absolutely. We always seem to want other people to change. So I'm happy, stop doing that to me kind of thing. And once we understand that I'm doing it to you also, and figure out that if I can't handle what you're doing, it's because I can't handle what I really should be able to handle. This idea that you have to make me happy is so powerful, but yet that is so inappropriate in how we think about our world. Our world is so broken. It isn't about you. Life is about me. Now that sounds selfish, and I know that does sound selfish, but it's really not selfish, because if I'm focusing how I'm experiencing you, then I can change how I feel about you. I can give you a great example. If I'm unhappy because of the way you're treating me, in my mind, the emotions, my imagination are creating the I'm unhappy. Now, what I think is if you behave differently, I'll be happy. But what's more true, I need to change how I'm thinking about what you're doing, right? So that I can still be okay with what you're doing, but still not have such large emotions about it. And that's why we talked about emotions. Once emotions start showing up inside us, any unprocessed emotion from the past really affects us. So that gets back to, as I was talking with them, I began to ask them what they wanted their vision to be like 5 years from now. Well, they moved away from the relationship a little bit and recognized that they had very solid, similar goals, but were fighting about things that really didn't make that much difference. So as I'm working with them, we're going to begin to work on them individually to become the man and woman that they need to be so that they can make this relationship work.
Would it be safe to say that if you had one person and 2 separate people that could be their partners, and now they're with one person, and because of the issues this person has, it's not working with this one, can this person still have those issues and have it work with this person because of it's a different dynamic between them?
No, you take the same person that you are is where you are. And so whatever difficulties you have in the current relationship, you'll take to the next relationship. That's just how that is. That's why when you're moving from one relationship to another, you need at least a 2-year break, because your brain needs time to kind of reset and let go of those things that didn't work. That's why, again, speaking about educating someone about their historical views of the world is so important. If you have a vision of where you want to go, the things that prevent you from completing that vision are the things that are inside you that is a belief system or an attitude that was created, or patterns that were developed while you're growing up. So if we start with vision, the things that you are working toward that vision, the things that hinder you from being in that vision are the things that we work on.
So when we talk about vision, how do we break that down? How do we see that vision? How do we know what that vision should be?
Oh, there's all different kinds of visions, kind of depends. Now, what we learned already, Steve, is that goals just don't work, because if you're setting goals, you might have the goal, but if you don't have the emotion that comes with the goal, then you're just setting goals. And so that's what we want to get out of, even though we have a vision for where we want to go. I'm going to focus on, how do you want to feel along the way? What are the emotions? What are the things that you want to experience along the way? And if you focus on that, it actually changes the way the goals unfold in front of you. Because if the goal isn't giving you the emotion that you really want, then that goal isn't working. And that's why in relationships, I don't try to save a relationship. It's what is it they're experiencing, right? What is the things that are going on in that relationship, so they can still be friends and even have children together and not be married anymore and in a relationship and really be good friends, because they learned that what they were doing was trying to make something that was never going to work, which is where we get into all kinds of difficulties. So the focus on the vision is, where do you want to be, not where do you want us to be.
Is it safe to say that that relationship may have worked if they, let's say, met you and you worked individually on their issues that came, like we said, from their childhood?
Well, first, let's talk about open-mindedness. If someone is not open to accept the fact that they have things that they need to change, now, it's fascinating to me to talk about creating my world. I think that I have the ability to create the world that I live in. That is developed by this. It doesn't matter what comes toward me. It only matters how I react to it. And my reaction is creating the world that I live in. If I am reacting in a really big negative way and I'm always unhappy about that, I'm creating unhappiness, right? But if I'm always letting the world take over and I never get what I want, then I'm reacting, right? So it's learning how to have that balance, that assertiveness to get what I want, which is selfishness, and still be able to let go of the things that I can't change. And that's part of transformation.
Interesting. Okay. So would that be number one, vision?
Vision is number one.
Okay.
Number two is this idea of letting go. And this is the most powerful and the difficult one, because it's kind of along the line of forgiveness or resentment. Kind of hate to go there sometimes, but we start with, what is it inside you that triggers you? What gets you sped up, right? What gets you going that you can't seem to stop the thought process? Or you lay at work, wake at night when something happens, like your boss gives you a bad review, or some friend says something negative to you, or you get really upset about what's happening in the political realm. It doesn't really matter what it is. When there is something that spins you and you can't stop thinking about it, that is the second part of what we definitely need to focus on.
All I can say is, tell me more.
Well, it's so individualistic because everyone is so different. So I want to go down a path with you real quick about some things that I love talking about.
Sure.
Because I have a system, it's called I call it the house. And if we think about this house having 4 rooms in it, one room is who lived with you. One room is where you lived. The other room is what happened in the world. And the other room is what were the political, the social, economic views of your family, their faith. These 4 rooms actually structure how you think about the world: where you lived, who lived with you, what happened in the world, and what kind of things that your family believed in, and who influenced you. And here's why. When we're a child, did you know that we're the only beings that aren't afraid of things when we're born? Every other animal that's born has a natural fear of fire. Every animal, but the human being does not. We have to learn to be afraid. That's fascinating. That's how valuable our growing up years are to our development. Because if we don't get the fear of fire, what's going to happen? So if we don't get the skills to be a healthy adult, what's going to happen? So that's why the socialization is so important. So thinking about letting go is understanding the influences that happened early on and how they molded the way that you think about the world.
Now, when you say let it go, Dan, does that also mean when a situation presents itself that either you don't let it affect you like you used to let it affect you?
Well, it's complicated in some respects, because letting go means that I'm willing to address the things that I can change and not focus on the things that I cannot change. And that's the biggest part of letting go.
Gotcha. Okay. Is it okay for somebody, let's say they're in a situation and something bothers them, could be work, could be an ongoing, issue, whatever, to just numb yourself to it? Just like, I'm not going to let it bother me. I'm just move that to the side. Is that okay? Or should you have some kind of reaction to it?
Well, that works fantastic until it comes up 4 years later. And you're reacting in a really big way. See, the way to know that you haven't really managed old energy is when you have a reaction, like a reaction that's bigger than the moment calls for. Again, when someone's in crisis, the reaction is always bigger than the moment calls for. That means that if you think about your emotions as a bucket, and this bucket has all these emotions in it, when something goes in, whatever's inside that bucket gets stirred. And if there's a lot of unprocessed emotions that you haven't let go of in there, it just shoots into your body. Next thing you know, you're a lot bigger than you need to be. So learning how to let go of those old things is very powerful. But I want to transition for a moment because we talked about this before, and this is an important part of the process that we're in. Because I'm working with a young lady who was abused when she was a young child, and she started with me about 4 months ago. And she was so afraid that she was going to have to talk about that abuse. No, we've learned that talking about what actually happened makes the emotions more powerful. So instead of talking about them, we acknowledge that it's true, we accept it, we start thinking about letting go of it, and then we focus on how we react today. Because if we learn how to process the emotions that are happening today in the right way, the emotions from the past will go away. Let me give you an example. When you get really angry and it's really big, it's because there's a lot in that anger bucket. Well, anger is a secondary emotion because what happens before anger is I get hurt. If I learn to process and allow that hurt, oh, that hurts so much. If I learn to process the hurt, when I feel hurt, all the hurt in that bucket begins to flow out of it. And the more I feel hurt in the beginning of this process, the more hurt flows out of my bucket. So in the very beginning, there's a lot of emotions because they're flowing out of you. And I'm working with a couple, actually a particular individual, this young man I'm working with, and he's in his early 30s. And he's like, I can't believe how hard this is. He said, I love you, Dan, but I hate you at the same time because everyone says I'm so grumpy. Well, yeah, you're irritable because those emotions are showing up. But if you don't let them show up, especially in the beginning, they can't pass through you. But what happens as you feel the current event and you process it, let it go through you, right? And learn how to let go of it, and those emotions show up, pretty soon, all of those old emotions have been processed with the current event. So pretty soon that bucket is so empty, it's almost like there's nothing there, and it changes the way that your brain functions.
It's going to be a kind of a gross analogy, but it's almost like having a scab. When something comes up, you pick on the scab, or you just don't even know you're doing it. But after time, it starts to heal, and you can't or don't even want to pick on that scab anymore.
Exactly.
I'm glad that made sense because
yeah, well, it's exactly like that, right? It's just like that. It's need to heal. Well, our emotions are just exactly like our body. Let me remind everyone that we only have one set of pain receptors in our brain. So if you pinch your arm, you know where that pain is because it's right there, right?
Sure.
So it's called local pain. But when you have emotional pain, it's in every single cell in your body. And that's why it's so powerful. That's why we say we are depressed. Well, I am not my broken arm, and I am not depressed. I'm simply having depressing thoughts. If we can recognize how our body processes emotions, then it's easier to understand that it's just a chemical process that is happening inside me, and I need to name it accurately. So I'm just having angry thoughts.
Interesting. Like I'm processing that in what you're saying. And I think a lot of us are thinking about that and how we apply it to our lives and those thoughts. So number 3 in our 5 stages to transformation, what would we call it?
Oh my gosh. Well, we're going to call it the power of emotions.
Okay.
And the reason we're calling it that is because I don't think you have the list accurately. Do I have it here? But the power of emotions is where how powerful it is for our emotions and how they affect us. For example, I chose this morning as I was meditating to bring the emotions that I wanted to feel to me today. Like I made a commitment last week to not talk about the weather. I have failed at it every single day this week because of being cold.
Yeah.
Because I just don't like cold weather, right?
Same.
So it's kind of, you have this really weird thing going on. Weather is something that we do socially. The reason I'm saying that to you about the power of emotions is because most of us do not think about pulling emotions toward us. Most of us just let emotions show up based on what's happening. Well, you have a choice. You can actually start choosing the emotion that you want to feel in the morning, because your brain will look for that emotion in the day. What you think about is what your brain will try to confirm. For example, a friend of yours buys a new car. You didn't even know that those cars existed, right? That's all you see. Now, there's not more cars around of that model, but you notice it because your brain starts confirming what you're thinking about. So if you practice bringing the emotion of contentment and joy and happiness and fascination and curiosity to yourself and thinking about it, want to bring it to you, contentment, your brain will start looking for ways to find that in the things that are happening during the day.
That's fascinating. It really is. When you think about it, it's almost like setting, and we've heard about this before, setting the intention for the day. You know, when you first wake up, whatever, whether you're going to meditate, pray, whatever you're into, setting that, almost setting your mind in a certain state. But I find it fascinating that your mind is going to look for that.
Well, it is going to look for that because your mind wants to affirm what you believe is true, which is fascinating. So here's the other power of emotions. Is if you don't feel uncomfortable when you're working with me, like really not like, don't like this, then you're not doing well. Because we have a habit of always wanting to feel good. Well, we need to be done with that. That's why we're stuck, because you avoid the emotions. Well, in transformation, the emotions are the most powerful thing that you can do. You really have to feel the emotion in order for it to really begin to show up. So we practice skills where you actually create the emotion that you are avoiding. And here's the fascinating part of that. That's why the power of emotions is so important when you talk about who you are. For example, one of the things that we'll do is, I worked with a guy that was a plumber, and I had him pretending to be angry because he needed to figure out how to handle his anger, right? So if you are actually acting like you're angry and you're creating the emotion of anger, your body learns how to manage it because you're creating it. But if anger just shows up, you're not creating it, it just happens the old way. But if you're creating the emotion, then your body learns how to handle it. And when it actually shows up voluntarily, when something's happening to you, then you know how to handle that unpleasant emotion. That also tracks exactly like with embarrassment. Like we do activities where you want to feel embarrassed, and you do that on purpose. So you learn how to handle that emotion, like asking for compliments, all kinds of things that we do to rewire the brain to get your body used to feeling like you're uncomfortable. And then it's a lot easier to be the person that you want to be when something uncomfortable shows up.
We're talking with Dan Clark. He's a life coach, and you can check him out at transformedlife.net. It's all about the 5 stages of transformation today. And I want to go back on something that you just said. When you fabricate the emotion, let's say call it anger, whatever it might be, is it still effective in terms of feeling what that emotion is and being able to react to it because you're making it up?
Well, you're making it up because you want your body to have the sensation. So you're not solving anything. You're just pretending like you're angry.
But is it
You're
the
just
same?
getting,
Is it the same sensation as a real anger moment?
yeah, because you're putting that much energy into it, right? So like for an actor who's going to cry, they have to produce the emotions to cry, right? So that's what you're doing. You're producing the energy to be angry or to be sad or embarrassed or uncomfortable. And when you're producing that, because you're doing it, you're a lot better at handling your emotions when it actually shows up. I mean, that's simplified. There's a little more complications to that. But once you start practicing that, it's fascinating how it changes you, because when you become uncomfortable because you're choosing, it's easier for you to choose to be uncomfortable later.
Gotcha. Wow, that's super cool. It really is. Yeah, it's I didn't know it was possible to do something like that. And basically what we are talking about is rewiring your brain.
Yeah, exactly. That's what that is. You're rewiring the brain. And here's the other cool thing about this, though, Steve. And this is what I love about this. If you focus on learning the skills that you should have learned between 0 and 7, it bypasses all of those experiences to the current life, to the current age that you are. And those other experiences don't need to be rewired because your brain uses the earliest experience to tell you how to behave today. That's why we talk about childlike behaviors and childlike innocence and learning how to be animated and love who you are, because that is what your brain really wants, is that innocence to be restored. And I'm not talking about childlike behavior that's childish, but that innocence that we all have on the inside of us, our God self.
For me, that's monumental, what you just said. The fact that if you can go back and fix that back here in the beginning of your life, it's almost like you erase everything from this point to your current point.
So the common thing that I hear from someone all the time is that their world just opens up. It's like, wow, I never thought that way. Because when we are afraid, right? Step number 4 is power of acceptance, right? Power of accepting what's true. That's number 4. Number 3 is emotions. Number 4 is the power of acceptance. As we can begin to accept what's true instead of having this, I don't want this, right? Little narrow head, narrow thinking, and like be open and start accepting what's true, accepting the childlike innocence that we have on the inside of us, not being so judgmental. It's amazing. Whatever you're reading or whatever you're doing for life, it just begins to completely change the way you see your spouse or your boss or the person next to you or someone driving the car that's next to you, or even across the restaurant, or even obviously relationships or anyone, because you see things differently because you're experiencing openness of not feeling like you're going to be harmed. You have to feel safe.
That's interesting. I'm a big proponent of acting like a kid. I really am. That's kind of partly how I'm wired, and I will try to get back to that.
Well, I can see that in you, actually, which is very true. Innocence isn't something that's always easy to manufacture in someone, because obviously when someone's struggling, it's because they don't know how to be innocent. Now, however, being childlike and being innocent are two different things, because if you can't ask for compliments. Now, let me tell you something that we do with someone when we're asking them to work on their process here. We'll ask them to do something like asking for things, but here's the kind of thing we ask them to do, something that's extremely embarrassing. Like stand in front of your car, in front of the door, and wait until someone comes along and asks them to open your car door for you, and then you get in. Here's why. That's stupid, right? Why would you ask them that? Well, that's the point. The more things that you do, like stand in front of a door that has a handle, like a grocery store or somewhere that you want to go inside, and just wait for someone to come along and ask them to open the door for you. It's very simple. Behaviors like that create this emotion where you feel like, wow, I really shouldn't be doing that. But also it creates the emotion that you want of being silly and embarrassed. That's why I encourage someone to go to a playground, slide down the slide, swing on the swing, not with children, because with children, you'll do it with them. You do it with adults.
Would you go with other adults? Because if you go by yourself, it may look a little creepy.
I go with other adults. We go to the park and we swing. Come on. I do that. I love the color. I have all kinds of silly stuff I do.
Yeah, same thing. My daughter just turned 14 the other day on her birthday, took some of her friends to dinner, and they were in the car. And I know this is not the right thing to do, but I opened up the sunroof and let them stick their heads out while we were driving.
Oh my gosh.
And, I felt like a kid again, and they were like they've never experienced air before. It was just fun, just putting your hand out there and feeling it, but just little goofy little things like that. Just, it's just fun, doing.
It's absolutely fun. And that's showing them, which I love that about you being a parent, is that they don't have to always follow the rules. It's like, come on now. It's like, what's this really going to hurt? This is just fun to do. And that also is called being in the moment, which is just allowing the things to show up. And that's also part of what acceptance is just being in the moment, letting things flow and not always being resistant to the things that show up. You're like, we can't do that, or we shouldn't do that, where the kind of things are.
That's probably one of the most important things to remember, living in the moment. And up until about a year ago, that's one thing I didn't do until somebody pointed out to me and said, you should live in the moment. And then I thought about it, and then they said it again. And then it came clear. Do I always do that? No, but I need to, you just gave me the reminder, live in the moment.
So that comes down to this thought about living in the moment is also not thought blocking. And I don't know if you've heard that term before, but thought blocking means that, I can't say that, or, we get in a place where we just can't feel like we can express ourselves. And that's this thought blocking that happens in all of us. Living in the moment means that we're not thinking while someone's talking, that we are just with them. And then we simply respond after they're done. Like whatever shows up, we learn how to flow with it. When you feel safe on the inside, you can flow with anything because you're not afraid of what's going to show up, because you're teaching them how to be okay with the unknown. And most of us don't know how to be okay with the unknown. I mean, that's so simple, but it's so complicated. Like, for example, the number one yearning that we have, or fear, the number one emotion that we have is fear, which is fear of death. And if you can teach someone how to move more toward that fear of not being afraid of the unknown, it tremendously changes the view that they have of what's happening in the moment.
Interesting. So we're at what number 4? We're up to number 5.
Number 4. Number 5 is actually the power of choices. And this is why choices are real important, because most of us, I can't because, right? And this is where it gets really problematic. And this is why it's the last one, because if we work through the emotions and all the other things before that, then we can start recognizing the patterns that prevent us from doing the things that we really want to do. For example, again, the number one thing that I work on with someone is they have a relatively successful life, but they've never really done the things they've wanted to, or they've tried a lot of things that have been unsuccessful at them. That's because they don't recognize the emotions that have a hold on them that prevent them from stepping into that next part of their life. So the power of choices is learning how to make the right kind of choice. For example, often we understand that we're always pleasing one of the parents that raised us. That's a choice that we're making unless we become open to understanding how those patterns affect the way that we think. So when we start thinking about choices, we focus on core values and what they really value the most and how they're living their life and are the kind of things that they don't want to be true about them in 10 years or 20 years or in 5 years. And so then we start focusing on what kind of choices can they make to become the man or woman that they want to be, or where they want to go with their goals. And since those choices have emotional reactions to them, and since they've done the work before, it's a lot easier to make those choices come true. And this is where it really begins to flourish, because this is where the transformation takes place. It's like, wow, I never knew I could have a marriage that was that great, or be in a relationship so wonderful, or I could so much just enjoy spring, or just love being in an elevator, right? And just feeling and watching things go by as I'm going down in this glass elevator, or just really enjoying a walk, or learning how to enjoy myself. The power of choices is my ability to be in the moment and choose the things that I want, and also my willingness to be in the choice that I want consistently going forward. For example, again, I talked about choosing the emotion that I want, same kind of thing, whatever we choose. But it's also about intentionality, which was a fun word we talked about last time. I think you remember intentionality.
Right, right. When you wake up in the morning, I want to go back to that point earlier because you just hit upon it for a split second. You wake up in the morning, what should you be thinking? Like for you, like, you woke up today. What was your intention for the day in terms of your emotion?
I dreamed some, and I had a really weird dream today, so I woke up, I was processing that for just a few moments, and typically I either put my headphones on or have a couple puppy dogs that are close to me. So I'll just start thinking about my day. Like, what do I want? And it doesn't take very long. It doesn't have to be 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be a really long time, just a few minutes. Just think about what I want. And I'll put my hands, my chest, and I'll just start thinking about how I want to feel in the day. What do I want to feel that day? What do I want to experience that day? I try not to think about the things I have to do. I want to think about the things that I want to experience. Now, most mornings, and this is one of those, I'll do a meditation for about an hour between 5:30 and 6:30. I wake up around 5:30 almost every morning, and I do a Joe Dispenza meditation. I really love his work. And that's the start of my day. But when I'm done with that, that's when I start focusing on my day.
Interesting. And when we say that, we're talking about focusing on the feelings that you're going to have during the day.
Correct. The emotions that I want to have during the day. Like today, I was focusing on how I wanted this interview to go and how I want to have breakfast with a couple of friends this morning, what I wanted to experience there. And I've got some other things in my world that I'm wanting to feel. I just want to have a really good day. I want to work outside. It's a little cold. So, okay. I just want to feel like I'm getting things accomplished today that I want to accomplish, to not feel overwhelmed by the things I have to do.
So we're talking about the 5 stages of transformation with Dan Clark, life coach. Dan, what do you find is the biggest hurdle that people have when they first come to you and they want to change their life, whatever their situation may be?
It's always other person centered. This is what's happening to me. Almost everyone has some victim mentality, and that's because of the way that we're raised as a child. It's called the drama triangle. And that is so powerful because we are unaware of that pattern that gets established. The victim means that, well, my mom always told me this is how this was supposed to be, or I really hate the way I was raised. And so the world just understand how I want things to be done for me, because what we want to do when we're a victim is make sure that things are always going the way I want them to go, because I don't want to feel bad. I want you to follow my rules. Either that, or I want you to do what I need so I feel happy. Now, the flip of that is, if it's not victim mentality and other person centered, it's always about everybody else. And this is the other thing I run into a lot, which is where life is always about the other person. We don't know how to make it about us because it feels selfish. Now, we all know people who are really, really arrogant and selfish. One of my friends called me selfish the other day because I was working with them, and sometimes we're unaware of what we're doing, right? And so we were working together, and we were working on a project, and she's like, "You're really selfish." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, right." So often we don't really notice that because I'm not really selfish, but in the moment I was having selfish behaviors. Now the reason I mention that is because sometimes we get into that focus because we don't know what we're doing. That doesn't mean I'm selfish, but I owned it and said, "Ooh," and I stopped, right? But when someone's highly selfish, we all know that's extremely difficult. But what's true is that I do what I want. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't do what you want either, but it means that I don't put myself in a place where I'm never getting the things that I need, my needs met. Because if I'm not healthy, I cannot be healthy in any other thing that I'm doing.
Did you have a problem with that previously?
Oh my gosh, I was so arrogant. Controlling, arrogant, hyper religious, super, super difficult. I've been fired 4 times. This is my 5th career. And so I have had a very difficult time getting my life figured out. But once I figured out what was going on in me, I recognized that I really needed to change. And that's what led me to do this.
Wow. So we have some time. So now I'm you for the moment. What triggers you? What brings those things back? Or is there anything? Have you gotten past that?
Well, I haven't, but that's a good question, Steve. You put me on the spot just a moment because
you know what it is. I'm trying to make you feel uncomfortable. No, I'm not. I'm sorry.
You are. Well, that's okay. Honestly, there isn't much that triggers me except for maybe my siblings and my mom. And that's a great segue into the fact that you will never be different with the person that raised you, with a sibling or a mom or a dad. When someone grew up with you, it's really hard for them to see you in a different way. And they can spin you. Matter of fact, that was my sister that said that to me the other day, because I am kind of selfish, right? And those things, but they're always going to see you that way. So that was probably what triggers me the most. I really don't get triggered anymore. I'm very, very non-judgmental, very open, very clear-headed, very in the moment, can really flow with about anything. And to me, I find that fascinating, thinking about how I was just even 7 or 8 years ago, because I was so hard to live with.
It's interesting you say that because I have a twin sister, and it's been our relationship like that. And right around 2019, it dropped off. We hadn't talked to each other for a while, a couple of years. And I was just texting with her before. Things are all better. We patched it up. But what you just said in terms of selfish, she would basically say about me, but she's actually now helping me with something in my life that I'm working on. And, we kind of patched it together. And I think we came to a point where now we understand each other. We know that we love each other and it's okay. Have we dug deep into the core there and peel back all the layers and figured out what the issues were? No. So could it surface again? Maybe, possibly. But for now, it seems okay. I don't know if it's one of those things, leave it, if it isn't apparently broken.
Well, that's a great question, Steve, because if they don't want to fix it, then don't. I mean, for me in relationships, it's really about where they want to be also, right? Because I'm going to figure out what they want and I'm going to bend toward them a lot, because if they don't want to really move towards some of those things, I don't go in those deep conversations with someone who doesn't want to do that, especially when it's siblings. Your siblings, like I said, are always going to see you that same way. It's fascinating that you have a twin. And in that respect, then again, that gets back to family structure created that, right? Those difficulties that don't get solved in the first 7 to 10 years of our brain development is who we are as an adult. And if you don't have close relationships with mom and dad or your siblings when you're growing up, then you're not going to have them when you get older. It's just how that is.
Yeah, it is so powerful for anybody that doesn't realize, and we've talked about it a lot, but the 0 to 7, just shape your life. Think about it. Take time, driving, meditating, whatever it might be, and go back there and analyze the issues, the challenges, what was going on in your life, and you probably find the answers to what's going on right now.
Absolutely. And I have a free emotional class on my website if someone wants to sign up for it. It's 8 classes, just 8 videos. There's a PDF with all of them, and it really helps you kind of understand how emotions function and how we are so driven by wanting to satisfy the needs that didn't get met while we're growing up. And that's so powerful in every single one of us. We all have those. I still have, like today, the last couple of months, I have not accomplished some of the goals that I set 4 years ago because we all get distracted, right? And so I've been dealing with the last 30 days or so, maybe a little bit further back, maybe 45, about why that pattern is still here. And it's a little painful, a little powerful pattern. But even though you recognize it, you cannot fix a pattern alone. You have to have someone help reveal to you what you need to see. It always takes someone giving you feedback and insight about yourself. We can never, ever fix ourselves. You cannot read a self-help book and change. It's impossible. You must have someone giving you feedback. It doesn't have to be a life coach, but the value of that is extremely important. Now, I'm not a big TikTok person, but I saw someone say the other day, every person that's a professional athlete has a coach. Why don't we do that with life, right? I love that idea. It's exactly what I'm talking about.
It's so true. And why do they have it? Why do professional athletes have a coach? Because they want to be the best they can be.
Because they can't see themselves, how to hold the bat, how to hold the, how to catch, how to run, whatever those things are going on inside them, how to swim. It's true. So I want to talk about 5 personality characteristics, Steve. I'm not going to jump ship, but part of the power of choices is recognizing that there are 5 personality traits that are powerful in us becoming our best self. And I always incorporate these in everything that I'm doing. And I didn't come up with these, but I really love them a lot. And they are, the first one, and I mentioned it earlier, is about being open to new experiences. It's about being curious, childlike curious. Instead of saying, why did you do that? I'm more like, well, that's interesting. I find that kind of interesting. Like that's fun, right? Being curious about what's happening around you instead of like judging that, just be open about, well, that's the way that they're dealing with that, So it's kind of interesting to me, right? Like they're driving kind of crazy in the moment. I don't know why. So, if I avoid them or whatever that is, but you're curious, you're lightweight about it, right? So when you're open to experiences, using your imagination to follow how things are, it really makes this idea of life lightweight. Now, how I work on that is I have someone make a list of the things that they like and they dislike. And the reason that we make a list of likes and dislikes is because if you can figure out an exhaustive list of what you dislike, your brain will focus on them and you'll learn to let go of dislikes, because dislike is lightweight, right? I just dislike it instead of hate it. Same thing with likes. If you have a list of likes, an exhaustive list of likes, list of things that you like, then your brain will notice what you like. And it's easier just to like. I love things. I don't like the word love a lot because it's so easily used, but like and dislike helps open my brain to be open to the different experiences instead of not noticing what I dislike. Just notice it and move past it, right? We want to make our brain work very, very well in seeing the world very clearly. So that's characteristic number 1.
On that, when we talk about that, should we be using words like hate? I've always tried to shy away from that word because I just think it's just a negative, and use dislike. What are your thoughts on that?
Children never say the word "I'm angry." What do they say?
I'm mad.
I hate you.
Or I hate
no,
you.
They say I hate you. And why do they say I hate you? Because that's what it feels like. So, right, we should never say the word hate, but it's a very powerful word. The reason that children say it is because that's actually the level with which they're experiencing the pain. They hate. And we learn how to move away from that as we get older. So that's it's a great question. It's a great idea. I'm not sure that we should ever really say hate either, even though I think there's some things that I really hate. But when we hate something, I focus on trying just to dislike it, right? Because it's just not something that's working for me, right? That's maybe you might graduate more of a dislike, but again, to be lightweight, it's just true. You just don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And it's funny that you say that. Like when a child, let's say you say to your kid, go to your room. What are they going to answer with? I hate you. It's right. It's so true.
Wow. Yeah, it's because that's the emotion that they're connecting with. Then we learn how to move out of that. And that's how emotions are. That's why we have to have great social training to get away from that. The second one is conscientiousness, which is conscious of what we're actually doing. We're aware of the capacity that we have to do things. We're aware of how to be productive. We're aware of our responsibility, how we organize things, how things flow. We're just very conscientious or self-aware of what's happening around us. Self-awareness means that I know how I'm influencing the world. And that's part of this stage. Someone who wants to go to a life coach 5 times or 12 times, they're not going to change their life because it takes a year for the brain to turn around. So someone who makes a long-term commitment to be with someone who's truly helping them understand how they aren't as conscientious or self-aware as they need to be will really change everything about them. Now, self-awareness isn't like, I can't do this. It's more about I'm just aware of how I'm influencing the world. Remember, it's lightweight. I'm just aware of my responsibilities, how productive I am, my organization in the world, how I see myself, what I'm saying, how I feel about me. It's also an understanding that it's called requisite variety, which means that my ability in conscientiousness is to feel the emotions in the room and to feel my own. That's another part of self-awareness. If I can notice the emotions in the room or others in the room and mine, I can rule the room because I can move those emotions anywhere what I want. If I don't know, if I can't feel my own emotions to start with, but I can't feel the room or mine, I'm just not going to be as powerful as I could be. That's because if I have the emotions of the room, I know how to feel what needs to be said, and I can sense the things that needs to happen.
It almost goes back to being in the moment, because when you're in the moment and you peel away all those things that are in the way, you're in that moment, you're reading people, you're seeing them. It's almost like a DJ who's spinning live and he reads the floor and he knows what their emotions are, that he knows which way to go with the music to keep them motivated, to get more people out there to dance, because he's looking, he's reading, he's observing.
That's a great analogy. And you've heard the term flow before, when someone's in the flow. Well, that's what conscientiousness is that you're not conscious, but you're simply aware. You've practiced it so much that it just flows out of you. So that's just a very simple, it's a high level awareness of being what's happening around you. Extroversion is the next one, which is extroversion. Now, some people are introvert and some people are extrovert, right? Now, I'm highly an introvert. You see me in somewhere, be the last person to say hello. I'll talk to you if I want to. Sometimes I don't want to. I'm just kind of a little shy. I'm not going to talk. But if I have an opportunity, I will. Now, I introduce myself to someone, but I typically don't have a lot to say because I'm just kind of an introvert. But this is different than that. This is extroversion, which means that you have the ability to talk when you need to and when you want to. It's not like you're always shy. It's accurate assertiveness as opposed to being overbearing. Also, it's understanding how to be assertive, but not really be too much. And then understand that introversion is part of that, but it's not introverted. So that's a very powerful way of thinking about becoming our best self.
What's the term for somebody who is a mix between extrovert and introvert? There's a term, I can't remember what it is. And I think I would be there. I think I would be there. And to your point, I have friends who are what you can be kind of annoying. They're extroverted, and one of them is a salesman. And that's he comes into the room and he kind of takes over, and which is great. That's fine. Usually I let him do the work. Just
exactly. Well, some of that is ego, but some of that is over extroversion. And that's the kind of individual that we don't want to be, which is why conscientiousness comes before that, aware that when we're negatively influencing the world, we can draw that back.
Sure.
Agreeableness is the fourth one. This is the fun one. This is the one that I did not have. Everyone's got an opinion, right? Well, I tell everyone I don't have an opinion. I don't. And what I mean by that is that it's mine. Why would I say it to you, right? I'm just going to flow along. Now, if I disagree with you, I might say, I don't know if I can see it that way or not, but I can be agreeable and still be with you instead of feel like that you have to hear my story or have to understand what I'm thinking or have to understand me. Agreeableness means that I can agree with you at something that's going on with you, even though I might disagree. I can still be agreeable and not be pushy or be disrespectful or be haughty about it or think that you're wrong. It's, again, agreeableness isn't about you're right, I'm wrong. It's about learning how to by the moment, flow through what's happening and be okay with the difficulties that show up, because they really don't matter, because we're all human beings. We all have the same goal in mind, which is just to learn to get along, right? And so it's about trusting, it's about compassion, it's about understanding that I need to be respectful of your opinion and what you're thinking about. And I may or may not share mine, but it's more about just learning how to get along with you and be okay.
So question on that, you want to be true to yourself, right? So we're not just going to agree to agree. Let's say, this piece of paper is white and you see it as purple. How do we roll with that? This is a white piece of paper. Are you going to say, yeah, it is kind of white, or it's like, how do you say, you're saying agreed. That's what I'm trying to illustrate here, that you
in agreeableness, I would say, I find that fascinating that you think that that's actually a purple couch when I see it as green. And I love the fact that you're willing to call that purple. Now, the world might not agree with you, but I think it's fascinating that you're willing to have that opinion. I love that about you. If you're strong enough to hold on to that, let's do that. Okay? Let's figure out how we can make the rest of your life, because that's not a big deal, right?
Gotcha. So what you're saying is just don't be a negative. No, that is not white. Do you understand that you're not looking at a piece of paper properly? It's moving it along, going with the flow. Gotcha.
Right. So, but you're open to experiencing what they're doing. You're
Mhm.
conscientious of how you're influencing them.
Right.
You're having a little bit of assertiveness about the fact that you're okay with what they're doing, right?
Yep.
And then you're just agreeing with what they think is true.
You know
Where it really comes into difficulty is when someone says something about you that you don't think is true.
It's almost like a different camera angle. You know, if you think of it as, in terms of a TV show, you're looking at it from over here instead of looking at it, from this side.
Well, again, great perspective, because that's what you're doing. A child looks at things as innocence, like it's just true. If you think that's purple, okay, well, let's pretend it's purple for a while and see how that works, right? Just flow along with it.
Right.
Because it doesn't really matter. But when someone says something to you like, you're being a really mad, you're angry. Are you angry and mad today? Or is there something wrong with you? When someone asks you questions like that, most of us no, there's nothing wrong with me. Well, in my world, when someone says, are you doing okay today? I'm never defensive. I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'm not. I have to check it out, right? Because I can't see myself. So I'll be agreeing with them, right? Or if they say there's something about me that they don't like, I'm going to agree with them for the moment. Why would I? I can't see how I'm behaving. So I'm honoring what they're saying.
Got it. Okay. So these are character traits that we're looking at. And another one, do we have another one? Do we hit them all?
We have another one. These are 5 positive characteristics that someone that does very, very well in life has these well. The last one is kind of an interesting one because it's called neuroticism. Now, when you think about someone being neurotic, you think about someone being like, I don't know, over the top and crazy, right? And not doing really well. Well, that's what this is about. It means that they are able and willing to be emotional, like to have anxiety about something and be able to pull it back, and they have depression and be able to deal with it. Like 2 Saturdays ago, I spent half the day just being sad. Some of the things in my personal life are difficult. So I was just sad for half the day. I didn't want to push it away. I just sat with it and thought about myself and thought about things were going. Didn't want to push it away because I want those emotions to pass through me, right? So someone who is in this stage of becoming a really healthy adult allows themselves to be emotional, not reactive, right? Not like emotional, like having lots of emotions, but they allow the ability of the anxiety or the depression or the sadness or the fear to show up. And here's why that's true. You can't have an unpleasant emotion and not have a pleasant emotion. For example, you have to have an unpleasant emotion before you can feel a pleasant one. Courage follows fear. So someone who's neurotic, who has neuroticism in them, they are so focused on where they're going in their life that they're willing to work through the anxiety. They're not pushing it away. They're feeling it. Oh, this is so hard. This is what I want to do. This is where I want to go. This is the kind of person I want to be. But they're also so focused that at some point they don't care what you think because this is where they're going. But the other 4 are still true, right? So they're not harming you with that, but they're just really focused on where they go, almost like they're neurotic about it, right?
So we're saying that being neurotic is not such a bad thing.
It's called intentionality in a different way. This is where I'm going. Please don't get in my way.
What if you're in that situation, and I totally got the neurotic, and you made it very clear. It's somebody that can bounce between different emotions and not harbor them or get stuck on them. What happens if you do get stuck on them? What if you're not at that point? Let's say, like you're having a sad day. We all do it. I'm right there with you sometimes. How do you get out of it?
Well, an unspoken emotion never goes away. So the best way to get those emotions to go away, now I'm not talking about venting, but talk about what you don't like about how life is treating you. Like when I was doing this on that Saturday, I was simply talking out loud, and I had breakfast with friends the day before and talked about it a little bit, but I was talking out loud and talking to myself and thinking out loud about what I don't like about life. I can't think my way to transformation, okay? I can't talk my way to transformation. It always takes behavior. We talked about that earlier because we have to behave in a certain way to create emotions. But when I'm sad, I have to think about it, talk about it, and then I behave like I'm not sad, right? So it's kind of the opposite side of it. So to get those emotions to go away, you must talk, because an unspoken word still has language on the inside of it. You asked a really good question, and I want to go here for just a second because it's called withholds. and it's another process. And as you can see, this process of transformation can be super complicated, but anything that you have that you've never said to someone has energy inside it.
Thinking about
Anything
that.
that,
Yeah.
exactly. So now, do they need to hear it? No. Is it about them? No. Is it about you? Yes, because it's your imagination. But if you don't practice getting, and that's not talking about venting, it's talking about saying, I hated this, made me so angry when you treated me this way when I was 15 or 18. Like I had a high school teacher that treated me badly. When I was going through this, I wrote him a couple of letters and read it to the person that was in front of me, got rid of that energy, right? So my past has been processed. That's how you process it. You just talk about what happened, what you didn't like, right? You're not venting. Oh, no. At some point, you can even say it without emotions because it's just a checklist. I'm letting go of this. The way you handled this, the way you treated me, the way I felt about it, I'm letting go of this. And your brain will do what you tell it to. So it's a withhold list of anybody in your past that's harmed you. You simply practice writing the letter or writing the list. And when you're done reading it, throw it away, read it again, write it a couple of different times. And pretty soon the energy in that is gone.
Lots of questions on that. When you write that letter, are you reading it out loud? And when you talk out loud about your feelings, let's say this person over here hurt you. They did, a number of different things. Should you be talking, by yourself out loud about that, your feelings for that person and how they hurt you so you can get it to release?
Well, anger only goes away when it's focused on the person that harmed you.
So do you need to actually connect with that person to make that go away?
Your brain doesn't know whether they're in the room or not. So you pretend.
Interesting. Well, that makes
That's
it a little easier.
Yeah, there's a theory called Gestalt. That's why it's so important. That's why it's not about the other person. See, if it's inside you, it's not about them. Now, sometimes you need to have conversations with people that are in your current world, and sometimes you need to go back.
Sure.
And sometimes you do. Like a lot of people will go back to their grave of their parents or someone that harmed them and talk with them at the grave. And there's nothing wrong with that because it's a power of that. But all you're really looking for is a way to release the energy that it shows up when it shows up. And it's like a one-time deal. Like I wrote them a couple, depends on who it was, but you're right. It's a one-time deal. Again, you don't have to have the emotions necessarily, but you have to be thinking about who it is that harmed you as you're speaking it. Now, what works really well is if someone is in front of you pretending to be that person and you're just reading it to them, right? Because there's a body that's right there. Because when you say something to someone about what you don't like, there's power in that because there's accountability. There's a social part of you that doesn't want to say anything. And so when you are willing to have, like, for example, if you are willing to have nothing unsaid on the inside of you, that's powerful. And that's where we're headed. That's why when you're asking me earlier what spins me, I have nothing in my past that I'm aware of, nothing that's unsaid, nothing.
This has been, what a great session. I feel like we're in session right now.
Oh my gosh.
and we have a couple of minutes. I want to share something because you just sparked something in my mind about the teacher that you mentioned. So I always loved art. I was into graphics, and I'll never forget. I think I was like in 11th grade, and I was painting a picture. It was a barn. It was in a field, fall day, and I just couldn't get the sky right. So my art teacher, Ms. Meyer, comes over. I'm like, "Can you help me out with this? It's just not coming out right." And then, she's like, "What do you want me to do it for you?" I'm like, "Well, just show me if you could." She starts painting the sky, and then she turns to me and says, "You know what? You are an underachiever." I'll never forget. She had coffee breath. But she said, "You are an underachiever." And I never forgot that. And I still hold it with me. But the interesting thing is, a couple of years ago, I got a card from her out of nowhere. I don't even know how she got my address. And she said that she was proud of me and where I've come in my career, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know if she was releasing something from with her. I don't know. But what she said was right, though. And I still believe it.
Well, that's fascinating because that gets back to this idea of energy exchange. When you think of someone, because we never have a random thought, often when you're doing this work, this person will either show up in your life or they'll connect with you in some way. Because when you think about someone, they actually can feel that energy.
Let's hit that real quick, because I've been hearing more and more about energy and how it translates, transcends. It doesn't know time. That's why they can do Reiki sessions. That's why they can do spiritual or any type of healing over a Zoom video. So are you saying, Dan, that let's say you're thinking about somebody and they're on the other side of the country, potentially your energy is transformed to them?
That's why, correct. That's why when I feel like I want to feel something before it happens, right? I'm pulling that energy in my day ahead of me to me in advance. So I'm creating the event before it happens.
Wow. And I think that's also why they say that you should, if you're religious, pray for somebody in terms of, let's say it's somebody that you dislike, pray for them. Just send positive vibes to them. They've got problems. Yeah, they may have, screwed you over, so to speak. But it's like, take the other road, take the high road, and just, put the positive vibes out there, because it's not your problem. Maybe it's their problem.
Well, that gets back to the self-examination, self-awareness. If you have difficulty with someone like that, it's because you're not examining yourself enough. Because if you're judging them, you're judging yourself.
Explain that. We have literally a minute or two.
You can only see the energy that's inside you. So if you no longer are a judgmental person, you don't judge others. It's magic. When you clean the energy up inside you, you're just so innocent. You don't even see it. You don't.
Wow. It's like you don't even care.
Yeah, because it's just like there's, it's like when you're in a bubble, right? You can only see what's inside the bubble with you. And you're in your energy circle. What's inside your circle is what you see, right? Because you're looking through it. But when you clear out that energy, when you start working on forgiveness and letting go of the stuff in the past, it's not in your bubble anymore. When you don't feel judged, pretty soon you don't feel judged because you're not judging. And it's like as I said this to you earlier, people start seeing things in a completely different way. You get rid of that old energy. It's like, wow, they're suddenly seeing life so clearly.
I have one final question with that, and that's based on what we talked about before. When you do that, you get to that point where you don't judge them and, kind of rolls off your shoulder. Isn't that counterproductive in not feeling the emotion, though?
No, because judgment isn't really an emotion. It's actually an action. It's a condensation. It's a condemnation. Judgment is more of an action, like I'm judging you. Like I can say that you're a car thief and you be a car thief and I'm not judging you. It's an accurate judgment. But I can say you're not a good person because of that, which is a judgment. So there's accurate judgment, which is just accurate, which is true, right? Like I wear glasses, or I can't believe you wear glasses, right? Because that makes you look so stupid. It's how we say it. So the energy inside, that's the powerful part of that.
Interesting. We've hit a lot today. I think very beneficial.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Somebody wants to work with you. They want to transform their life. We're striking chords here with them in their mind. What do they do?
Transformlife.net. There's a couple places that you can log into or actually to connect with me. There's a couple little talk with me now thing. I'll give you a half an hour of my time anytime that you want. Also, there's a place to sign up for my free class right there. Would love to have you do that. If any way you want to get a hold of me, there's also a contact page on my website. So I'd love to talk with you.
And when you say the free class, you mean?
It's a free class on emotions. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
It's 8 classes. There's actually 8 different sessions. They're videos that I've done over the years, and they explain not everything that we're talking about, but it's the foundation of how our mind uses emotions to prevent us from being our best self. Powerful
stuff. And nobody I know talks about this kind of stuff, and it's so elementary, I think, in my mind, that everybody should be talking about this. And thank you for bringing it to our attention, Dan. Dan Clark, transformlife.net.
Well, thank you, Steve, very much.
Thank you. It's great being with you, and looking forward to getting together sometime soon.
You bet.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.